It wasn't just a cartoon, it was a cultural race car roaring into television history. Speed Racer burst out of 1967 Japan with color chaos and characters that never hit the brakes. But what fans never saw were the creative risks, production mishaps, and hidden meanings hiding under that shiny hood. What really powered the Mach 5? And why does a show this old still have a cult following today? Strap in, because these are 20 weird facts you didn't know about Speed Racer. The show was originally called Mach Go Go Go. Before Americans ever heard Go Speed Racer Go, the world knew it as Mach Go Go Go. The name wasn't random, it was a triple pun. Mach referred to the car's futuristic speed. Go was both the family's surname, Go Mifune, and the number 5 since the car was the Mach 5. And the repeated go, go, go captured the energy of Japan's booming car culture. But when the series crossed the Pacific US, producers simplified it to Speed Racer, a cleaner, flashier name for English-speaking kids. In doing so, they lost the linguistic playfulness Yoshida had built in. Fans in Japan still say, Mach Go 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 rolls off the tongue better, it sounds like a race chant. The new English title may have been easier to market, but it stripped away some of the identity and cleverness that made the original special. Beneath that simple translation was a story of cultural trimming speed traded for simplicity. The Mach 5 was inspired by real Japanese sports cars. The Mach 5 wasn't born from imagination alone, it came straight out of Japan's 1960s car craze. Tatsuo Yoshida studied sleek vehicles like the Toyota 2000 GT and the Honda S800, which were then symbols of Japan's post-war innovation. The Mach 5's aerodynamic nose-curving body and aggressive front profile mirrored the optimism of a nation rebuilding through technology. But Yoshida didn't stop at realism. He blended sci-fi imagination, adding retractable buzzsaws, periscope cameras, and jump jacks features, clearly inspired by James Bond gadgets from Goldfinger. The Mach 5 became an icon of design excess, something that looked both believable and impossible. Kids dreamed about driving it, while adults admired the craftsmanship. Car magazines even ran Mach spec sheets, guessing how fast it could really go. In many ways, the Mach 5 was Japan's fantasy supercar, an animated answer to Ferrari and Jaguar. It represented speed invention and confidence during a time when Japan was just starting to dominate global engineering. Speed Racer was among the first Japanese imports to America. When Speed Racer hit American TV in 1967, most viewers had never seen Japanese animation before. It was one of the first anime ever dubbed and broadcast in English, predating Astro Boy's wide recognition. That made it a cultural experiment. US producers had no idea how American kids would react to Japanese storytelling rhythms, stylized eyes, and melodramatic pacing. The result? Sensation. The show's intensity cars, flying off cliffs, emotional family drama, and hyper-speed editing felt like nothing else on TV. But localization was tricky. The Japanese language moves faster than English, forcing dubbers to rewrite entire lines to fit the characters' lip movements. That's why dialogue felt rapid-fire and breathless. It wasn't a creative choice, it was survival. Yet that unintentional style became part of Speed Racer's charm, influencing decades of anime dubbing. The success of Speed Racer opened American doors for later imports like Gatchaman and Voltron. Before the anime boom, there was only one racer leading the pack. The voice actor for Speed recorded 100 lines an hour. Peter Fernandez wasn't just the voice of Speed Racer, he was its creative engine. Working in New York's Translux studio, Fernandez faced impossible deadlines. Hundreds of lines per session, no second takes, and barely any time for rewrites. He often recorded 100 lines an hour, juggling overlapping mouth flaps while maintaining emotion. He also voiced Racer X, wrote many of the scripts, and directed other actors all in the same cramped booth. When people say, Speed Racer sounded breathless, they're right. It was literally recorded in a rush. Fernandez developed the signature machine gun delivery style, where every word slammed into the next. It became iconic. His versatility turned a low-budget import into something dynamic and full of personality. Few knew one man was behind so many voices. Fernandez later said the hardest part wasn't keeping up with Speed, it was keeping his lungs working. His work redefined voice acting under pressure and proved that Speed wasn't just the hero's name, it was the production's reality. Spritula and Chim Chim were added to soften the violence. At its core, Mach Go 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 wasn't a children's show, it was a melodrama filled with danger. In the Japanese original, villains died in fiery wrecks, racers risked their lives every episode, and moral lessons were grim. But when the series crossed into the US, producers feared it was too dark for Saturday mornings. Their solution? Inject comic relief. Enter Spriddle and Chim Chim, the mischievous kid brother and his pet chimpanzee. They served as walking and climbing censorship tools. Whenever things got too heavy, say a car plunging into a ravine, the show cut to Spritle stealing candy, or Chim Chim getting stuck in a trunk. These moments softened the violence, distracting young viewers from what really happened. Fans later joked that Spritley and Chim Chim were emotional airbags, cushioning the impact of tragedy. Ironically, this attempt at censorship made them some of the most recognizable characters in American pop culture. Love them or not, they helped Speed Racer survive the jump from serious anime to all-ages TV phenomenon. The theme song was written in a single night. Go Speed Racer Go! Few cartoon themes are that instantly recognizable. What fans don't realize is that the English theme was written overnight. Danny Thompson and Billy Mentz were told to deliver a catchy tune by morning for a new Japanese import. They studied the original melody, wrote a punchier version with English lyrics, and recorded it in one caffeine-fueled marathon. The result was a 60-second anthem that became an instant classic. The lyrics perfectly captured the show's speed and optimism, while the upbeat brass and percussion mirrored a race's rising tempo. In Japan, the original theme was more patriotic and emotional, focused on family honor rather than heroics. The American version turned Speed into a pop icon. Radio stations played it as a novelty hit, and decades later, rock bands from Sponge to Alpha Team covered it. The tune became more than a jingle, it became the sound of a generation's first brush with anime energy. Even today, one note is enough to bring fans back to 1967. Tatsuo Yoshida's tragic death haunted the franchise. The creator of Speed Racer, Tatsuo Yoshida, was a visionary, but fate didn't let him enjoy his success. After founding Tatsunoko Productions with his brothers, Yoshida transformed Japan's animation industry. Yet by 1977, he was diagnosed with cancer and died at only 45. His death came just as Mach Go Go Go's global popularity exploded. Colleagues later said Yoshida had plans for a darker, more adult sequel exploring Speed's rivalry with Racer X. But those notes vanished after his passing. His brothers Kenji and Toyoharu took over the studio and went on to produce other hits like Gatchaman and Cashern, carrying fragments of his ideas. Inside Tatsunoko's Tokyo office, Yoshida's original Mach 5 sketches still hang framed on the wall, a quiet memorial to the dreamer who made Speed emotional. His loss marked the end of the show's original spirit, but his designs became eternal. In anime circles, Yoshida isn't remembered for how he died, but for the imagination that never slowed down. The English version cut entire storylines. American audiences never saw the complete Mach Go Go Go. When Translux adapted it for US broadcast, several episodes were either edited beyond recognition or removed completely. Plots involving gambling, organized crime, or hints of death were deemed too adult for children. Some story arcs were even merged together, creating confusing continuity gaps. For instance, character motivations changed mid-episode, simply because two different Japanese scripts were stitched together. American editors cared more about airtime than story logic. Ironically, the faster, jumbled pacing made Speed Racer feel even more intense, perfect for hyperactive kids. In Japan, the show was serialized drama. In America, it became pure adrenaline. Decades later, when fans restored the original episodes for DVD and streaming, they were shocked at how emotional and complex the real series was. Beneath the dubbed chaos lay a family saga about ambition, love, and loss. The cuts hid that depth, but also accidentally created a cult legend. Racer X was originally Speed's older brother, Rex Go. Every fan remembers the mystery of Racer X, the masked rival who always appeared at just the right time. But in Japan, there was no mystery. His identity as Speed's older brother, Rex Go, was revealed early on. The American adaptation rewrote the story to make Racer X's secret identity a long-running enigma. That choice turned him into one of animation's first recurring masked mentor archetypes, inspiring future heroes like Zorro and even Batman's vigilante allies. What made Racer X fascinating wasn't just his disguise, it was his guilt. He left home after a fight with his father, watching over Speed from the shadows to keep him safe. This emotional complexity was rare for 1960s cartoons. The US version turned that dynamic into an ongoing riddle, adding suspense week after week. Viewers obsessed over clues in his dialogue and body language. Racer X became proof that even children's shows could craft mystery arcs long before prestige TV made it trendy. American broadcasters banned an episode for intense violence. One episode of Speed Racer crossed the line at least by 1960s standards. The Most Dangerous Race featured a driver engulfed in flames, shown struggling before his car exploded. For US networks used to. The Flintstones, it was too much. Broadcasters quickly banned the episode from syndication, but word spread among young fans about the forbidden installment. Bootleg VHS tapes of it circulated for decades. When it was finally released in full during the DVD era, critics were surprised it wasn't gory, but emotionally raw. The scene symbolized the price of obsession, a theme way ahead of its time. Interestingly, Japanese audiences viewed it as a tragic moment of honor, not horror. The ban only made it more legendary, turning a lost episode into fan folklore. It showed how differently cultures viewed risk, heroism, and death. What scared American censors in 1967 would later be seen as powerful storytelling. The animation reused frames like crazy. At first glance, Speed Racer looks like it's in constant motion, but look closely and you'll notice something fascinating. The same 3-second loops repeat again and again. Tatsunoko Productions worked on an extremely tight budget, forcing animators to reuse existing footage whenever possible. Explosions, tire spins, and Speed's trademark gasp were recycled across episodes, sometimes even mid-scene. This economy animation wasn't laziness, it was innovation. The studio learned to create speed through rhythm, not realism. By reusing frames with quick editing and dynamic camera pans, they gave the illusion of unstoppable momentum. It was a technique born from necessity that accidentally became art. The repetition built tension, creating a hypnotic pulse that made races feel faster than they were. Animation historians now call this loop intensity, a visual trick that turned limitation into style. While Western cartoons aimed for fluidity, Speed Racer leaned into motion itself as an emotion. Each reused frame wasn't a shortcut, it was a statement. Speed is perception. The show used camera tricks inspired by Akira Kurosawa. Tatsuo Yoshida wasn't just watching race footage, he was studying samurai films. To make car chases feel cinematic, he borrowed camera techniques from Akira Kurosawa, especially those used in Seven Samurai. The result was a kinetic animation style that mimicked live-action cinematography. artists used wind streaks, hard zooms, and sweeping pans to mimic the drama of sword fights. Instead of swords clashing, cars collided. Instead of rain-soaked duels, you had thunderous mountain races. Yoshida instructed animators to treat every car like a warrior, turning mechanical action into human emotion. The result? Motion with purpose. Even Western critics, who initially dismissed the show as chaotic, later recognized its visual rhythm. Kurosawa's influence made Speed Racer one of the first anime series to blur the line between animation and film. The next time you see a Mach 5 drift in slow motion or lightning flash across the windshield, know that you're watching cinematic heritage in motion. If you're hooked on these secrets, go ahead and like and subscribe, because we're only halfway through and the wildest ones are still coming. The English dub team worked out of a tiny closet. Behind the chaotic dialogue and hyperactive energy of Speed Racer was a team literally boxed in. The entire English dub was recorded in a repurposed supply closet in New York City. There was no ventilation, no monitors, and no playback. Peter Fernandez and Corinne Orr, voices of Speed and Trixie, had to time every line using stopwatches because they couldn't see the animation. Each session ran for hours, with the temperature often soaring past 90 degrees Celsius. Fernandez later joked, "We were sweating faster than the Mach 5. Despite those conditions, they delivered electric performances that defined early anime dubbing. Their rapid-fire delivery wasn't an artistic decision, it was survival under impossible constraints. Corinne Orr even performed multiple characters per episode, switching voices mid-line when extras were needed. When the dubbing wrapped, they stepped out into the hallway gasping for air, laughing that they'd just raced a marathon with words. Their cramped workspace produced one of television's most energetic soundtracks, a triumph born in a closet. The show accidentally predicted future car tech. When Speed Racer debuted, its gadgets seemed pure fantasy. Retractable saws, automatic jacks, underwater mode, a periscope camera. Yet decades later, much of it came true. Modern rally cars use adaptive suspension similar to the Mach 5's jump jacks. Built-in GPS navigation mirrors, Speed's cockpit communication systems. Even front-mounted cutting tools resemble today's emergency extrication devices. Engineers from Toyota once admitted that Speed Racer partly inspired experimental concept cars in the 1980s. The Mach 5's dashboard buttons anticipated multifunction steering wheels and even smartphone-style touch controls. What was once anime imagination became automotive innovation. The line between fantasy and foresight blurred. Speed's world predicted a future where technology would merge man and machine, a concept that defines modern racing today. In many ways, Yoshida wasn't just making entertainment, he was visualizing progress. The Mach 5 didn't just race, it predicted the road ahead. The M on Speed's helmet doesn't mean Mach. For years, fans assumed the bold M on Speed's helmet stood for Mach, referencing the Mach 5. But the truth runs deeper. In the original Japanese version, the letter honored Mifune Motors, the fictional sponsor that backed Speed's racing career. The name was an homage to legendary actor Toshiro Mifune, whom creator Tatsuo Yoshida admired. It symbolized not just speed, but pride in Japanese craftsmanship and cinema. When the show was localized, the translators removed all references to Mifune Motors, stripping the M per of meaning. English audiences were left to assume it stood for Mach or Mom, as some early fan magazines joked. Yet, for those who know the history, the helmet is a tribute linking Japan's film legacy with its anime revolution. Every time Speed tilted his head before a race, he wasn't just gearing up to drive, he was carrying the mark of Japanese storytelling itself. That single letter told a cultural story lost in translation. A cereal company helped revive Speed Racer in the 90s. After fading from pop culture in the 70s, Speed Racer made a roaring comeback thanks to breakfast cereal. In the early 1990s, General Mills sponsored reruns on MTV and Nickelodeon to reach nostalgic parents and new kids alike. Their marketing campaign used phrases like, "The legend returns," and plastered the Mach 5 on cereal boxes. The gamble worked. Suddenly, Speed was cool again. Toy stores sold out of die-cast Mach 5 models, new comic series launched, and vintage t-shirts became collector gold. MTV aired Speed Racer, the movie in 1993 introducing the franchise to Gen X audiences. For a brief period, Speed Racer merchandise outsold Transformers in several US chains. It wasn't just nostalgia, it was rebirth. The brand had gone from forgotten import to retro icon. Ironically, what had begun as children's programming found new life with adults who had grown up humming "Go Speed Racer Go" over Saturday morning cereal. The Wachowskis' 2008 film was almost an R-rated satire. Before it became a family-friendly spectacle, Speed Racer, 2008, was nearly a very different movie. When the Wachowskis first developed their adaptation, their script read like a surreal commentary on media addiction and consumerism. They imagined Speed trapped in a world where racing was controlled by megacorporations, sponsors manipulated truth and fame, consumed identity. Early drafts reportedly included darker tones, political undertones, and even psychological breakdowns. Warner Brothers balked, demanding something lighter and more toy-friendly. The Wachowskis compromised, keeping the visual madness but toning down the satire. Still, their fingerprints remained. The dazzling race sequences, emotional family themes, and neon dreamscapes were unlike anything else in theaters. Critics didn't understand it then, but fans later hailed it as the first live-action anime. The original concept, a social critique wrapped in speed and color, might have been too far ahead of its time. Speed Racer wasn't just a remake, it was a collision between innocence and industry. The original Japanese ending was bittersweet. Most Americans remember Speed Racer as ending on a triumphant note. Speed wins, everyone smiles, cue the theme song. But Japan's version closed on a more somber scene. Speed drives off alone into the sunset, while Racer X, his brother Rex, watches from a distance unseen. There's no victory parade, no moral wrap-up, just silence and separation. This quiet ending symbolized maturity and sacrifice values deeply rooted in Japanese storytelling. It implied that success comes with loss and that heroes often stand apart. When US editors localized the finale, they replaced this melancholy moment with cheerful music and narration. For decades, fans never saw Yoshida's intended farewell until the uncut Japanese episodes resurfaced on DVD. Watching it today, the difference is striking. It feels cinematic, even poetic. The ending turns Speed Racer from a children's cartoon into a meditation on family duty and distance. Sometimes the fastest racers are those running from their past. Real racers credited the show for their careers. The line between fantasy and reality blurred when professional racers began citing Speed Racer as their first inspiration. IndyCar driver Takuma Sato and NASCAR's Jeff Gordon both mentioned the series as a formative influence. Its high-speed visuals focus on precision and moral lessons about sportsmanship resonated globally. In Japan, driving schools even used clips from Mach Go 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 to teach cornering dynamics and awareness. Engineers admired its technical imagination. Drivers admired its sense of honor. Speed Racer's message, "Win fairly," race passionately transcended language. The Mach 5 wasn't just an animated car, it was a dream machine for future athletes. To this day, racing conventions and formula events often host Speed Racer cosplay tributes. For a cartoon that started as a small anime, it left tire marks on real-world racing culture. The show didn't just entertain, it built a generation of drivers who believed in courage at full throttle. The franchise still earns millions year. More than 50 years later, Speed Racer is still making money. Between merchandise streaming rights and licensing deals, the franchise generates millions annually for Tatsunoko Productions. Everything from Funko Pops to streetwear collaborations keeps the Mach 5 alive. Even the 2008 film's renewed cult following boosted sales of retro toys and soundtracks. In 2022, a new live-action Speed Racer series was announced for Apple TV+, proving the franchise's endurance. What began as a hand-drawn experiment in 1967 evolved into a multimedia empire spanning decades. Yet its core remains the same: a boy, his car, and the thrill of the race. In a world of changing trends, Speed Racer endures because it embodies something timeless: the human need for speed, family, and freedom. The engines may have changed, but the spirit never slowed down. Half a century later, Speed Racer is still on the track, vibrant, unpredictable, and faster than nostalgia itself. From the pencils of Tatsuo Yoshida to the pixels of Hollywood, it's a legend that never stops evolving. Every roar of the Mach 5 echoes across generations. Which of these secrets surprised you the most? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe, because in the world of Speed Racer, the finish line is just another beginning.